Welcome back to Angie Seams and Pockets, and this is part 2 of my commercial pattern series. Today we'll be putting together the commercial pattern that we preserved in part 1. If you haven't already seen it, go ahead and click the link down in the description below. It's not a necessary thing to understand this video, but it might help because I'll be referencing some of the things I did in that one. With that being said, let's get started. So since I've already traced out my pattern pieces onto the plastic in part 1 where I show you how to preserve patterns, so the only thing I'll be grabbing from my commercial pattern are the instructions. So these are the general directions. If you've never worked with a commercial pattern before, I'd recommend getting yourself very familiar with them. And then on the underside is where we get our sewing directions. You get your little key up here about the different fabric layout, so right way, wrong way, interfacing, and lining, as well as general tips, thread, needle, seams, and elastic application. And then in the second sheet here, I have the detailed instructions for every individual letter in the pattern. For bodysuit B, we don't have a lot of instructions, we just have the general how to put the front back together, as well as where to place the snaps, neckline, attaching the neckline, and then finally sewing and attaching the sleeves, as well as hemming the sleeves. So there aren't a lot of steps to this particular pattern, and I am super excited to get started. So if we recall in part 1, when I was showing you how to preserve the pattern pieces found in the commercial pattern, I also told you that it's very important to look in the back to look at specific types of fabric and notions you'll need for the project. So I went ahead and grabbed those. For the bodysuit, I'll be using this really beautiful burgundy. It kind of looks a little more red on camera, but in person it's a little more purplish. I have this beautiful lace fabric because I want to make a lace bodysuit. I have thread to match, an empty bobbin case, some snaps. So first things first is cutting out the pattern pieces. So I'm going to go ahead and move my notions to the side, as well as my pattern pieces, and lay out my fabric. And as you guys can see, some little fluffy butt has been sleeping in it. And this is one of the reasons why I prefer to transfer my patterns onto plastic, to not only preserve their natural original state as the tissue, but to also ensure that when I'm pinning, I'm not tearing or destroying the fragile tissue. Say that 20 times fast. And then I'm gonna move my fabric down, and I will line up the back piece. With both the front and the back pinned onto my fabric, I'm going to go ahead and pull out my fabric scissors and cut these out. To cut out the neckline, I'm going to use a scrap piece from the front and back to not cut more into the yardage that I have here, to kind of save myself on fabric. This is a very nice, expensive fabric that I got forever ago that I just haven't had the time to create into something beautiful, so I don't want to waste too much of it if I don't have to. Alright, so I have my neckline, and then the last thing I cut out from the beautiful lace fabric is the sleeves. So I'm going to refold the fabric to do 2 pieces, and now I'm going to cut it out. So now that I'm done cutting out the fashion fabric, I have the gusset, which I'll be cutting out of this nice little fabric. So now that I have all of my pieces cut out and ready to go, the thing to do is put them together. So I'm going to be changing my camera angle, and I'll see you all in a second. One thing I'll also recommend before sewing any project is using one of your scrap pieces and actually sewing down a seam to make sure that everything is programmed correctly. So I'm going to quickly do that with this piece. And as you can see, I still have my stretch because I'm using a stretch stitch, but it's also looking very, very neat from the outside, so this stitch absolutely works for my project. So I'm gonna go ahead and get going with my actual pattern pieces. So the first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take off my patterns. I'm gonna start with the shoulder seams first. So I'm gonna put it down right side up, and then the matching piece wrong side up, and I'm gonna sew the two together. So I'll line up my fabric at 5/8, and I'm gonna go ahead and sew, and don't forget to backstitch. Now that I have the shoulder seams put together, it is time to put together the rest of the bodysuit. So I'm gonna do the side seams first. And now that I have the side pieces sewn together, it is time to sew together the back. And with that, the garment is slowly starting to take its shape. So now it's time to sew on the gusset. So I'm gonna find the front, go down, and make sure to sew it on the inside. So now I have the gusset on. Next step is putting together the sleeves and the neckline. I'm gonna start with the neckline because all I have to do before I attach it to the bodysuit is to just put it together on the ends. Now the sleeves. I got one sleeve down, ready to be put on to the bodysuit. Time to put together the second sleeve. Now it's time to put all 4 pieces together. So I have the neckline and the sleeves attached to the front and back. I have my gusset here. I also went ahead and hemmed both ends of the bodysuit. So now the last step is to attach the snaps. So now the snaps are done, and that completes my bodysuit. Time to put it on. And that's that. I'm also thinking of maybe doing a part 3 to this where I can show you how to take commercial patterns and alter them to your own designs, kind of like using them as guide in flat patterning. If any of you are interested in something like that, let me know down in the comments below, and I will see all of you lovelies in my next video. Bye!